Welcome everybody, and not just to tonight, welcome to Biology Week. And Biology Week runs from the 2nd to the 10th of October, showcases the important and amazing world of the biosciences. So before we begin, let me just tell you, if you haven't clocked that it's Biology Week already, let me tell you how you find out about it. You go to www.rsb.org.uk/BW calendar. So rsb.org.uk/BW calendar. There you'll find a list of events and activities and to keep you busy every evening at 7:30 and even beyond. So my name is Mark Winterbottom and I have the absolute privilege of being chair of the judging panel for the Biology Teacher of the Year Award. Now the award is run by the Royal Society of Biology, which, as you know, I hope, is the organisation in the UK that champions biology left, right and centre, really. The Biology Teacher of the Year Award seeks to identify the UK's leading biology education teachers, recognising the invaluable role they play in educating and inspiring the next generation of biologists. So what makes a Biology Teacher of the Year, I hear you ask, or even what makes a finalist for the award? Well, the award rewards teachers who demonstrate outstanding and inspirational teaching of biology at secondary school or at college, contribute to the development of science throughout the school, and influence the teaching and learning of biology beyond their own institution in other schools and educational settings. The award's open to all teachers who are working with students aged 11 to 18 years old, teaching pre-university level biology programs of study, and currently employed in a UK-based school or college. Now tonight we're going to hear from 3 finalists, including 2 winners of the award. Each of them is going to discuss their work and reflect on their teaching methodology and practice, or at least that's what it says in the email I was sent, but I'm sure they're going to tell you all sorts of wonderful things in their own particular ways. When you're listening, you may well have some questions. So if you do, please put those questions into the Q&A box. Now, I don't know where that is on your screen because I can't see it on mine, but don't put things in any chat box or something labelled chat because we may not find that. So the Q&A box is what you want. We'll get all those questions together and we'll ask them all probably at the end of all of the talks. We may squeeze one question in just after each of the talks instead. So enough of me because I'm not the interesting person tonight. Our finalists are, and I'm going to start by introducing Matthew King. Now, Matthew King was a finalist this year in 2021 and had, well, one of the more interesting experiences of judging. We couldn't go and sit in his classroom, so we did that virtually. And it was a really enjoyable virtual visit. He's head of biology at Westcliff High School for Girls. He was shortlisted for his various uses of technology and tools in lessons and providing a comprehensive programme of entrance exam workshops for students. He also delivers a science CPD programme in schools across Essex. So Matthew, I'm going to hand over to you and please enjoy.
Thank you very much, Mark. So good evening, everyone. Obviously, my name is Matt. So as Mark said, I am head of biology at a school called Westcliff High School for Girls in Westcliff, near Southend-on-Sea in Essex. And I'm also involved with the Science Learning Partnership in my area, which is referred to as SETSA. I have a little bit of a role to play with the Chat Biology Twitter account, if anybody has ever followed that one, but I'm one of the team members on there. And I've also just put on there my own Twitter handle, just in case anybody's interested. And you may notice that I featured that at the bottom corner of every single slide. So if you fancy having a little follow on Twitter, that would be great. And then we can always keep up to date with what everybody's doing. So the first thing I wanted to share with you that I feel is a particular thing that I've worked quite a lot on in my classroom practice is connected to models and analogies. And I don't know, there's quite a big following at the moment for this idea of walkthroughs, and it is actually one of the walkthrough strategies, abstract models with concrete examples. And it's really resonated with me, that particular walkthrough, because I think in biology that's a really, really useful teaching tool. So I just wanted to share with you a few examples of some models and analogies that I've been using in my teaching, and maybe it might inspire some people to take it onwards. So The light-dependent reaction of photosynthesis is quite a difficult concept for students and can be taught in a fairly what I refer to as surface learning methodology, but other people might know that more as spoon feeding. It's quite an easy one to just have a diagram of, and maybe you talk about it for sort of 20 minutes and then the students look at you quite shocked at all the long words you've just said. So what I tried to do here was to turn this into a role play, but where the students actually designed the role play for themselves, and I found that to be a really powerful teaching tool for them to design the layout of one of these role plays. And it's identified misconceptions to me that I would never have known that students had developed. For example, showing that the H+ ions were being pumped from one side of the room to the other. That particular modelling and analogy example, I've taken that in all sorts of different ways. I'm sure no biology teacher would be complete without a plasticine box in the corner of the room ready to go. So I'm sure lots of you have used the synapse example in some way, but that is a really powerful tool to draw on the desks and to get the students to model out something that you've tried to cover in the classroom, and then you can look over and you can see have they grasped that correctly. There's a particular tool that you can get and you can plug into your projector. It's just a Wi-Fi dongle, and then it allows you to use your phone as a portable visualizer in the room. They're available for about £15 on Amazon. And so you can put your phone on the camera mode, you can share your screen to your projector, and then you can hover over and sort of show up big screen a student's model that they've made, and get the rest of the class to critique it. So I think that's a really important stage of modelling, is the critiquing it, and how was it realistic, how wasn't it realistic, what improvements could be made. And then just another example there of modelling origami, two different ways of modelling the DNA, and then getting the students to really think about how is it good, how is it bad, how could we improve it. So the other area I wanted to share with you, which is still on the modelling and the analogies idea, was during lockdown, just because we're not in the classroom, and hopefully this is not going to happen again, but I tried to take the modelling home. So I ended up using some of my kids' toys to model the light-dependent reaction in this case, and model the Calvin's lollipop experiment in this case. I also did some DNA-based ones, but it actually showed to me that you don't have to model things with a scientific piece of apparatus. You can use something completely abstract. It's very small to see, but I've used a peg for a hydrolytic enzyme just in between the bucket there, and then students immediately said, why have you used a peg for an enzyme? Wouldn't a pair of scissors have been better? And just things like that that you can get out of making these different models. So the second area that I wanted to share with you was with the preparation for medicine and veterinary and dentistry that I've been running for my school. So we run a UCAT BMAT club on a Friday lunchtime, and we run that, as you can see from the dates this year, January through to March, with our Year 12 students, and we involve teachers from the maths department as well as myself. We've partnered up with our local medical school, so I'd really recommend, if you've got a number of students that want to go down that career path, do write into your local medical school, because Al and Anglia Ruskin were only too happy to have us popping in there, in this case with some Year 9 students. This was before COVID. We have our own MedSoc Google Classroom, and that's probably been the best tool actually, is to have a single place where all of those emails that come in from your Medic Mentor, your Medic Portal companies, you can put it all in one place and get it straight out to the students. So that's been really useful. All sorts of visiting companies can come into schools now, Operating Theatre Live, for example, in our school hall there, but that went down very well. They brought in pigs' heads that had been sawn in half, and we spent most of the morning extracting their brains, and the end of the day was spent looking at the intestines, which left an absolute stink in the hall, and that wasn't particularly popular with the rest of the staff, but it's gone down in memory. It had the impact. Just starting up a newsletter as well is a really good thing to do, I feel, and this one's made by students. I just proofread it before it gets published. But that there are plenty of sixth form students that are looking for that extra opportunity to put on their UCAS statement, and this has really helped some of those that might not have been the first ones to get up and speak and get up and debate things. They're quite happy to actually write newsletters and bits like that. And then the other thing is helping students with their interviews and being able to offer tailored interviews. Is something that I've been working on. And then finally, as Mark mentioned, I do a fair bit to try and share CPD with the local and the national area. So SETSA is the Science Learning Partnership that I am part of, and I'm leading the new biology specialism that particular SLP has been awarded. We're the only one in the country that's got that. And I just wanted to say, I don't know if many of you are hugely involved in STEM, but for me as a teacher, training to become a facilitator, and actually when I first, even before I started teaching, I was a STEM ambassador. It was such a good company to get involved in for CPD, for networking. It's been for me the link that's taken me through all of my teaching career to date, really, STEM learning. So I really recommend having a look on there's this thing called the STEM community now, where you can, it's all free, this is what I'm talking about here, where you can collaborate with other teachers, and a little bit of a shameful plug, I suppose, if you're in the eastern area, but we have quite a few different events. These are the ones that I'm leading coming up, and I know your SLPs that are local to you, if you are a teacher here listening in, will have similar ones, so do please have a look. So hopefully that has given you a little bit of a flavour of what I've been doing. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Matt. I think I'm allowed to ask you a question just at the end of each of these ones. I'm going to ask my own one, which is about the pig's head sawn in half.
Okay.
And I can imagine the reaction that students had. I'm just interested in how you think about the value of that kind of activity, and perhaps dissection more generally, and why that has such an impact on students.
So first of all, I'm going to do the latter part of your question, but the impact of dissection. We've thought quite long and hard on, should we actually still be doing dissection, or should we be doing it with plastic models? We've completely switched to a school supplier that we know all of their products have come from a reliable and a reputable source. It's a company called Blades Biological. Because we did find that we had some students that were starting to question, why are we using hearts from a butcher's? Has this animal been killed for the purpose of our lesson? And then they're not actually wanting to do that. I personally feel if we don't offer these sorts of things, how are we going to inspire the next generation of healthcare scientists, doctors? How are they going to know that that's something that they like, that they might be interested in? I think until you've actually seen the real living thing, you just cannot bring to life the idea of the heart structure and things like that. So.
No, that's brilliant. And your answer kind of reflects how you started, which is about making concrete what's hidden and what's abstract, and in order to understand it.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to Gemma. So Gemma is the 2019 winner of the award. So we've brought her back from pre-pandemic days. She's currently assistant head teacher at Meridian High School. She won the award in 2019 for her inspirational methods of teaching and her contribution to the development of science in and beyond her school. She regularly reflects on pedagogical developments on her blog, which is pretty prolific, and she organises science-specific networking opportunities for other teachers. So Gemma Singleton is who you're going to listen to next. And Gemma, over to you.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for that. Quite difficult to follow, but I'll do my best. Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can see my screen. So my name's Gemma Singleton, and I'm currently an assistant head teacher at Meridian High School that is based in Croydon. Something about my school which I absolutely love is the context of our school is a real driver for success and improvement. I teach in one of the most deprived areas in the country, where we have almost 70% pupil premium and free school meal students. So lockdown was an incredible challenge for us, as you're aware of all the news reports and things, but we did some really sort of inspirational stuff. But just a little bit about me and my methodology and practice that sort of led me to this, which was an utter shock, as one of my colleagues sort of nominated me without even knowing, until I then got an email through saying, oh, you need to write a case study about why you think you deserve it, which was amazing. So I think the first and foremost thing is I absolutely love my subject. And what was really fantastic, and I don't mean to toot my own horn, but the sort of feedback that the children and my colleagues gave Mark and Chris when they came to visit my school was really just fantastic to hear. And I love biology because it's just a fascinating subject, and it allows you to develop an understanding about you, the world that we live in, the evolution, the idea of the skills and the technology. It's so broad and so diverse, and I think that's what my students get when I'm in the classroom. I also think I was born to teach. I've got an absolute passion for teaching, for learning, for CPD. I am relentlessly positive and optimistic. However, I am realistic and honest with my students. Transparency is just so key to our profession, but also enabling students to critically think, to have exposure to divergent thinking, really allows me as a teacher to prepare them for the next steps and really increase their ambition, which is something that we've seen in my current school. I also think that great teachers often make great learners, and I still now love to learn. I will embark on any CPD that I can get my hands on. I am a true geek and I embrace it. I love it. And I think, why not continue to learn and experiment? But also in that, my opportunity to support and guide teachers to also grasp opportunities to learn. So things like NPQML, NPQSL that I've completed, but also, and I agree with what Matthew said, the Science Learning Partnership is absolutely phenomenal with their offer. And I too have recently trained to be a facilitator, and just that exposure to learn and influence others is just fantastic. Also, I think sharing is caring. And the more that we can share, the more that we can support our colleagues, whether they're within our school, whether they're across the country, whether that's through a virtual platform, social media, I think we should do it. I'm also avid on Twitter. I love it. It's been one of the greatest CPD networks that I've had in the last 10 years of my teaching. And I do often share, I post resources. I also sort of support teachers through Twitter by setting up a heads of science support group. So people that were new to being a head of science, connecting them with more experienced leaders of science. And then sort of when I moved into senior leadership, I then set up a new to leadership group as well, which is working really, really effectively in the same way. I've also got the privilege of being an accredited specialist leader of education within science, which allows me to then go support and review science and biology, particularly in different schools across the country. I've had the privilege to work with Pixel for a number of years and sort of present to a wider audience, as well as present at events like Pedagogue. And also part of my role before sort of stepping into senior leadership team was being the teaching and learning lead for our Multi Academy Trust, and really supporting science and biology there. I've always prided myself on leading by example, and I've had quite an interesting journey through my schooling, and that's been about my work speaking for itself. And if I'm leading a team, if I'm leading a department, if I'm leading a school, then I have to lead by example. So if I want to inspire and sort of help people improve, then actually I've got to do what I say, and what I ask of people, because that's the only way that I'll be able to support them, but also empower them to become leaders. And finally, I think the opportunities for biology to enrich people's lives, there's so many when it comes to external competitions, the Olympiad, the Biology Week resources, the trips, there's a wealth out there. And I think with the one benefit that COVID's given us, it's opened a lot more through the virtual world, like the virtual tours. But it also enriches our lives because we can do cross-phase work. So we can go from early years right up to post-18 and further education. But also it enriches teachers' lives because it's about developing each other. So sharing best practice through things like teach meets. Sort of, it feels like an absolute lifetime ago when I did win in 2019. But since then, I've achieved so much. When I sort of won the award, I was head of science at the Beacon School in Banstead in Surrey, which is a superb school. And I was there for 12 years. And sort of once receiving this award, I then applied for an assistant head teacher job in a equally fantastic school at Meridian High School in Croydon. And I now lead on quality of education, teaching and learning, staff development, and working with our early careers teachers. I've had the privilege to present at international and national conferences, which I never thought would happen. I've supported several science departments across the country, and I've been really lucky within our GLF Trust to work with the next generation of biology teachers, and just to see them improve and embrace different things and see their love for the subject. I've implemented a successful teaching and learning model within my current school, and I continue to share resources. I've also written a quiz book, so thank you for anyone that's bought that. That's fantastic. And I've also been able to work with some science publishers to work some science material for their Key Stage 3 biology. And my next step, my next challenge in learning is I'm going to embark on my MPQH journey into potential headship. So I honestly think that the accolade of winning this, which I still feel is quite weird to say, has just allowed me to springboard into so much more opportunities. So that's me. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Gemma. That's fantastic. And it took me right back actually to Banstead and the day that we spent with you with Chris, and just the overwhelming sense of, I don't know, devotion, delight, excitement, which your students paid to you and your staff as well. There's one thing that really comes out from you, and that's your passion for the subject. And I wonder how, when you were young, who or how did that get instilled in you? Because you're clearly a biologist through and through, and there must be somebody in history who's responsible.
I don't know actually. Well, I think with regards to the teaching aspect, it was my year 5 teacher that I think sat in front of my mum and dad and said, this girl knows exactly what she wants. She would be a fantastic teacher. And it was my sort of Key Stage 4 biology teacher. And ever since then, I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. Anatomy and physiology is just, I love it. I absolutely love it. So.
Brilliant. my daughter's just started human sciences in London for the degree course, and she had her first embryology lecture. She messaged me and just said, "Dad, it's hard." I said, "I know, I remember." Anyway, brilliant. Thank you, Gemma. And let's move on to Paul. Now, if Gemma was the 2019 winner, then Paul is the 2021 winner. So that has been announced already, but I'd like to extend my congratulations again to him for winning this year. He again had quite an odd visit from myself and from Bev, the other judge. And we had spent a nice long time talking to each other on Zoom and listening to Paul talking about the way in which he thinks about teaching and learning. He's the faculty head of science at Hindland Secondary School up in Scotland. He won the 2021 award for his consistent commitment for excellence in teaching biology. And he's also created and hosts the High Biology podcast. He's the coordinator for West OS, an online school of recorded video lessons, which I think is in his background today. So Paul, over to you.
Thanks, Mark. Hopefully I can share the screen. Okay. Well, again, thanks very much, Mark. It's obviously an honour to have accepted the award this year, and to have been elected this month as a fellow of the society. I'm very, very proud to be the first Scottish winner of the award. Although, as I've said previously, I'm very confident that certainly won't be the last, as there's certainly so many fantastic teachers. I really want to start by acknowledging some of them who certainly influenced my own journey. None have done that more so than my own family. My wife Hannah, who's also a teacher, has been a phenomenal source of encouragement and support throughout my personal and professional life. And when it comes to that professional journey, I think that can probably be traced back to my own time at school. Mr. Drew was significantly younger looking at the time. He was a Canadian newly qualified teacher when he took over our science class at the beginning of my high school experience. And he was unfortunate enough to have me as a student for the next 5 years at that point, which, looking back now as a teacher, I suspect was at times pretty frustrating experience for him. Nonetheless, he persevered, and that sparked a curiosity in the subject, which eventually saw me move into Dundee University on leaving school to study biology. And it was in Dundee when I met Steve. Now, Steve would, over the course of my university experience, probably shape not just my academic outlook, but my attitude to the wider world. He spoon-fed me through my personal challenges with some of the trickier elements of statistical analysis. He supervised my dissertation and really further enthused me for the subject, and even really gave me the opportunity to be involved in some field work in Trinidad. It was one evening on that expedition in the Northern Range, several miles north of Arima, that I think I first seriously began to think about becoming a teacher. And it wasn't too long before I met Nikki, who I think might actually be with us this evening, and was the tutor for biology at Strathclyde University, where I did my teacher training. After completing my student placement successfully, thanks to his support, I found myself in the biggest secondary school in Europe, Holyrood Secondary in Glasgow, where Amanda was and still is the principal teacher of biology. She is a kind, passionate, encouraging mentor who gives absolutely everything for the young people of the Rood, as it's known locally, and is incredibly protective and supportive of her staff. And it was something that meant a huge amount during my time there. I couldn't really have asked for a better mentor, and I still find myself seeking her opinion and thoughts whenever I get the chance. At the end of that probationary year, it was really time to find a vacant full-time position, as we've all experienced. And it quickly became evident at that point that I was incredibly poor at education job interviews. However, Claire thankfully saw past that and appointed me as a permanent member of her science faculty at Hindland at the time, where I've been teaching ever since. So if you were to ask me to pick 5 teachers who led me to speaking tonight, I think these may well be the 5. There were others, of course, but I don't think anybody wants to be here all night. From the moment that Claire appointed me, I knew how lucky I'd been. The science faculty in Hindland contains some of the most fantastic colleagues I could have hoped to have. And I think it's really important tonight to state that although I'm very proud of this award from the Society, it's certainly not something that would have been possible without the colleagues around me. For me, I'm quite comfortable saying I'm not the best teacher I know, and I've been lucky to be surrounded by some of the best teachers and technicians that I know. The breadth of skills, the knowledge within that department is the basis of its success. and that's not down to any individual. The ability to have a laugh and find humour in challenges is what makes it special. And I've been really lucky to also have a shared faculty head post, which is shared with Debbie, who's wearing the rather fetching purple hat on the right hand side there, who's been a huge support throughout that time as well. So incredibly lucky is probably the main message of the evening. When it comes to my own classes though, I really like to make sure that we address why we're learning about something and not just addressing what we're learning. I'm really passionate that we learn better when we understand why we're learning it and why that's important and a value in our lives. And that, I think, almost always encourages greater engagement and ignites the curiosity that set me on my own path. I guess that's done in different ways. Sometimes it's as simple as a question, photosynthesis. How does a tiny seed that's not heavy become a big tree that is heavy? It's sometimes the way we pitch the content that we have, or occasionally it's relating to what's happening or what can happen in the real world. So relating cell biology to issues that will ultimately impact all our lives and the lives of our young people on some level, like cancer. So I was privileged to be part of the organising committee of the NCRI schools event when it came to Glasgow with colleagues from Oxford University, prostate cancer and NCRI. And off the back of that, I applied for funding to run a further event in the school, and we brought together pupils and colleagues from 12 schools across 4 of our local authorities for a learning event on cell biology, cancer, human anatomy. And staff at that point had a working lunch, all in the same room, no social distancing, no masks, and we began to collaborate on developing new material to support the learning and teaching around those topics together. So things were going really well. In 2018, we took a group of young people to Ecuador and Galapagos, 10 years after Steve had taken me to Trinidad. I think I look slightly older. I've got glasses and I've put on a few pounds, but the enthusiasm hadn't wavered, and it was great to give young people a taste of the experience that I'd had. Then in March 2020, we all know what happened. So I found myself, along with every other biology teacher in the UK, explaining to pupils and colleagues as what we thought COVID-19 meant and the impact we thought that could have. And I don't think I'll ever forget that feeling sitting on the lab bench and on the last day of school before that first lockdown. My sister, who's a doctor in Ireland, told a story around about that time about the Taoiseach in Ireland speaking directly to children about how their parents would be finding that sort of time hard and how they could, really help out at home. And so I found myself sitting on that lab bench relaying that message third hand by that point to the young people in the class. I don't think I had any idea the impact it would truly have on teaching, nor indeed the rest of our lives. And as Gemma alluded to just before me, in her own school community, that was reflected in that certainly resonated, as everyone in our department became involved in supporting our community in ways that we wouldn't necessarily have dreamt about prior to that. As a department, though, we were in a really, really strong place. It was only in August 2019, a mere matter of months prior to COVID landing in the UK, that our local authority found themselves defending the decision in the press to provide one-to-one devices to pupils across the city. So as we went into January 2020, every young person in our school had been assigned an iPad. And little did we know that they were to soon be relied on as our main teaching device come March. We were in a really strong position. We'd done a huge amount of work. Colleagues within the department, such as Dr. Gary Smith, one of our chemistry colleagues, had done a phenomenal sector-leading amount of work in developing tracking and monitoring systems and resources for young people over the course of a number of years. So we were in a really strong position getting into that lockdown, but it didn't change the frustrations that every teacher in the country felt. It wasn't the same. We felt remote, we knew we were far away, and we couldn't teach the way we wanted to. I was really inspired by Matthew using his children's toys to do the modelling, which was clearly a response to some of the frustrations that he found in not being able to teach in the way that he enjoys. And that was something that I myself found difficult. I like to tell a lot of stories in the classroom and putting things into context, and that suddenly became very difficult at the time, because at that point we were being recommended not to use Zoom or Teams in those early days. And my wife and I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I decided I would have a go and see if it was possible to come up with a podcast to support learning. I was really lucky, thanks to Lecky and Young Scot and Education Scotland who supported it from early on to help make sure that we were able to produce it and that we could get it onto all the right platforms to make it accessible. It's been listened to in over 80 countries around the world. What started out as an attempt to provide or to enhance the learning experience of 60 higher biology students in our department suddenly was being downloaded thousands and thousands of times across the world. We've had a wide variety of guests supporting it, from Scotland's first Black professor, Jeff Palmer. We've had the world poetry champion telling us poetry about evolution. Steve from Dundee Uni has made an appearance. We had Professor Jason Leach, our National Clinical Director in Scotland, giving regular updates in the podcast to young people about what was happening with schools and COVID, and a whole range of other inspirational people, and a number of members of the Royal Society itself. And off the back of the podcast, I was invited to start to think about how we could expand asynchronous learning for young people within Glasgow, within the West Partnership region, with the surrounding local authorities. And ultimately, that led to being involved in the early development of West OS, which is an online school of recorded video lessons, which has, over the last 12 months or 18 months, become the recorded element of the national e-learning offer in Scotland. For colleagues south of the border, I guess the nearest relatable thing would be the Oak Academy, would spring to mind as something that would be comparable. And so it saw us looking to provide recorded video lessons across the 3 to 18 curriculum. As part of that national e-learning offer, the West OS is the recorded element, so young people are able to watch video lessons any time on topics across the curriculum at different stages. They have access to live sessions through eSchool, which is set up by colleagues in the Western Isles, which had initially been set up to overcome isolation of a different kind, isolation of a geographical nature in remote parts of the country. And then there's a supported element which comes from Education Scotland with the curation of additional resources for young people. And so that work is ongoing, and there's a commitment at a national level to continue to develop that, not just as a COVID artifact, but as something that can enhance learning and teaching for young people for years to come, hopefully. It has been built on the vision and values of the West Partnership, which is the Regional Improvement Collaborative, which I've since been seconded to on a temporary basis to continue that work. We do have young people at the centre of everything we do, and really West OS aims to provide support for where there is a need. It benefits now from having contributions from teachers right across Scotland, from every region, and working with a range of partners, including universities, the World Wildlife Federation, and a number of others. And so the big challenges for us this year around that are the communication and the CLPL strategies that allow these resources and support to be aligned with pedagogy, and to ensure that colleagues are begin to explore how these can enhance learning and teaching, and that's something that we're really looking forward to as we move forward. When it comes to biology, I don't want to say I was biased when we were developing this, but I am proud that biology is one of the subjects that is most complete on the platform. We were able, before the alternative certification models, the exams that were not exams last year, we were able to provide young people across the country with a single A4 page overview of the entire higher course, A similar one was done for our National 5, the equivalent of GCSE. And young people were able to click on different areas of the course, and that would take them directly to the video lesson, along with a range of materials, summary notes, questions, answers, linked to the podcast where we had a suitable episode to align with it, and additional resources such as BBC Bite Size. They could see when certain areas had live support from colleagues in eSchool and click on that to sign up for that offer. And it allowed all of those resources in one place to support young people in their independent learning journey, as well as providing various overviews for a variety of schools to support different needs across the city and beyond. Moving forward and looking ahead, here in Glasgow, we are now preparing for COP26, and it's been a real privilege while on secondment to be able to get involved in aspects of the planning for various events around that. And currently in the midst of recording 4 special podcast episodes to complement Glasgow City Council's wider education offer, Our Dear Green Place. The podcast, which will focus on climate change, and while it's hosted by myself and Doug Allen, who's formerly Sir David Attenborough's principal cameraman, we're going to be joined by a whole host of guests. So we've got Chris Packham, Gordon Buchanan, Judith Ralston, and many more, although I have to admit tonight that at this point so far, I have been disappointed that Doug hasn't secured a chat with Sir David yet. Although, as an eternal optimist, I do hope that he'll that something might come of it, but I'll leave you guessing, and you'll have to find the podcast in all the usual places to find out how disappointed I'm ultimately left. I suspect very. So yeah, COVID has undoubtedly had an impact on my work currently, and I'm really proud of the impact that that's had. But I'm also very grateful to the colleagues that I've been able to work with throughout my teaching career. I think they're all equally deserving of any awards that get handed out tonight. And frankly, I'm really looking forward to getting off Zoom and back into the classroom. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paul. You've left me with one question, which is probably a bit unfair, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And it comes from various initiatives which have been going on at work. And I'm just trying to phrase it. Yeah, in terms of COP26 and in terms of climate change, how do you think you enable young people to take action and to be infused and to feel ownership of the climate change debate and to realise they've got some agency in it?
I wonder if the question should be slightly different, Mark. I actually wonder if it's how do we make the adults listen to the young people? I sometimes wonder. I think our young people, or my experience of our young people, is they're highly engaged in sustainability and climate change and in the world around them. We teach in a major city, and they don't need to be in the middle of nowhere to appreciate that. So yeah, I think as teachers, as a society, as policymakers, as academics, I think the question is, how do we make our politicians listen to our young people? Because it's ultimately they're the people that will be most affected by it.
Brilliant. I really like your answer. So this one I think I'll send to Paul because Matthew and Gemma have typed an answer in. So what advice, Paul, do you have to people thinking about becoming a biology teacher? Because your journey you've articulated really well.
I think if you're passionate about the subject and you want to enter a job which makes you lots of money, then you should look at biotechnology. I think if you want a job that makes a real difference to people, and a job that you walk out of at the end of each day or the end of each week, and you can genuinely feel you've made a difference, then you should get into teaching and do it. It's a really rewarding job. It's hard work. I don't think that's a problem. I don't think you could ask for a better job in terms of making a difference to people. So,
yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Paul. Now I'm going to go to the next question down in the list. So the question was, what new ideas do you have that you're excited to try in the future? And Gemma, I'm interested in the answer you've typed in, which is about promoting different careers to inspire students. And what you've done is, it says here, is you've brought actual living scientists, which I like the phrase, to explain their journey. Why is that? Why did you choose to do that, and what impact do you see that as having on your students?
So it was something that was sort of brought to me by my triple science group, and when I joined Meridian in 2 years ago, this is my third year starting with them. I think it would be fair to say that the aspirations of our students was significantly different to what it is now. And I think science was hated, like any form of science was hated by those students. And a brand new team of scientists came in, and our goal was to inspire students to want to study it further. My passion is obviously biology, because that's what I love. And sort of through year 9, we were getting more and more buy-in from our students. In year 10, the sort of the moss was gathering, so to speak, as it was rolling down the hill. But what was really interesting is when COVID did hit, it allowed us to look at things in a different perspective, and what that to people that actually I never really had a hope of getting them stood in my classroom for half an hour talking to children, but actually doing it through Google Meets and Google Classrooms allowed them to beam in for 20-30 minutes of part of our, because we do double lessons, as part of our double lesson to actually give like a really informative career talk. One of my favorite ones was actually by a lady that I connected with on Twitter, who was a neuroscientist and is now training to be a teacher. So she was like, I'll happily do it, it'll look great for my standards. And I was like, well, I kind of want you to promote the neuroscience aspect. And she talked us through her training, her career, the challenges she faced, because she was from a very similar background to my students. And I think that just sort of opened the floodgates a little bit. So the week later, it was like, Miss, I'm thinking of being this. Do you know anybody that does that? And so we sort of thought, oh, actually, we're missing a trick here. So we sent a Google form out to all of our sort of students across the school. And we got something like, our school is very, very small. We've only got 630 pupils there. But we got sort of a 250 responses saying, I'd like to know more about this. And so I just started to reach out, really. And then along came a forensic scientist, along came somebody that was involved in biotechnology. And it just sort of turned out that every month we have like a career focus. And the beauty is, through Google Classrooms, I can send a link to all science lessons that are on in that particular period. We record it as well. And the teachers can log in, and we have sort of a bit like we're doing now, a bit of a Q&A session where the teacher will facilitate the questions from the classes. But it was something so simple, but has now, when we look at the impact our students now want to go on and do, is significantly different from 2 years ago.
There we are. Sorry, I did an unmute complication. I think that's really interesting, and the way that came up almost accidentally, where you got somebody in and then they said, oh, do you know so and so? Do you know? And suddenly you've got all these requests and this all like windows on different careers outside of school. Fantastic, amazing. Matthew, I'm gonna slightly change a question which was asked in the Q&A box. Because as you say in your response to it, you were one of the finalists, and when you're a winner, you get you become a fellow and you get all of these other things. But I think, and I'm about to test it by asking you, that even being in this competition is something that's quite formative for a teacher. I'm wondering if you could say something about it, what impact it had on you as a teacher, not just sort of in terms of opportunity, but.
Okay.
But as the way you thought about teaching.
So when I found out that a student had nominated me, and I remember the day that it popped up on my account that you've been asked to fill out a case study, I immediately asked what did the student say, and I could actually immediately tell which student it was that had done it, and they were very keen to sort of share the joy with me, and it quickly went throughout the school that had happened. So the first thing I did was to submit the case study, and that really got me to think about and reflect on how I was teaching and what I felt I was doing that was an outstanding sort of aspect of my teaching. It was quite, I'm not going to lie, it was quite an intensive thing to produce the case study. Then when I actually got shortlisted down to the final three, that was when certainly SLT at my school and the local press got news of that. So it's really led to my face being, I suppose, a little bit more exposed. And because I'm leading the science partnership in our area, the biology aspects, it's helped, I think, get my face out there in the local area. And just we all suffer it a little bit, I think, in teaching, that are we good enough? Is what we're doing actually good enough? And we've always got that horrific going to be found out for something that we've not done very well. And I'm quite an anxious person. I'm always beating myself up about the smallest things, and to actually get this nomination, I think has massively improved my confidence in my own teaching. So.
Fantastic, thanks ever so much. I wonder if I could ask all three of you what will probably be a final question. I'm just looking at the time. If you were going to, and Muffy, I'll start with you because you're on screen. If you were going to talk about or identify maybe one or two positive things that have come out of adapting teaching and learning during the pandemic, and that can be both remotely and when they came back into school at distance and in mask, etc. What would you say perhaps that you've learned that will impact your practice going forward?
So I think with practicals, not being able to do those practicals in the traditional sense has really made me think of alternative ways to get students to still understand the practical. There's so many online interactive versions of some of the practicals out there. I was just using one today that was the thin layer, excuse me, that was the thin layer chromatography with spinach, and there's an online version of that where they can actually try it out with different solvents, and they can try it out with different stationary phases. Never knew that existed before lockdown, and actually went to look for that. So I still use that in lesson before they do the real thing. And secondly, I think all of the different AFL techniques that are now available online, such as exit tickets that we might have just done as a whiteboard or something like that, program called Ziplit, something that I used during lockdown for students to immediately type in their exit ticket answer, and they'd all immediately pop up on my screen, and I'm still using that back in the classroom.
That's great. Gemma, can I ask you the same question? What will you take forward from the pandemic year or months and year, and that will impact on your practice going forward?
I'm really old school. It's probably because I'm actually ancient, but I love, like, the visualizer is just my favorite thing in the world. And I think through the pandemic, just having my visualizer with me and being able to still model in the way that I do in the classroom, to still effectively communicate, to navigate the pace for my SEND students and my EAL students through the virtual learning environment was just the most powerful thing. And it just developed my own confidence within that, but also it's just something that the students really fed back and was like, we could still see in real time what you were doing, and it wasn't sort of just like a death by PowerPoint or type it in the chat function and things like that. And I think that sense of creativity that all of us, no matter what you taught, you just it was like we were all in the same boat and we were all starting from the same point. And that collaboration and that cohesion across my school and Twitter were just so openly supportive of each other and sharing of strategies that worked. And I just think that teacher inspiration and creativity, along with that supportive network, I think will long continue now, because it seems to just becoming the norm. So that for me was the best thing about the pandemic.
Fantastic, and I agree with you. I think we've all experienced that real sense of community that built even down electrons in a wire over the course of those months. Paul, I'm going to slightly change the question for you, because you've been on secondment, and I'm interested in hearing your ambitions for when you return off secondment and back to Hindland in the classroom, and what you'll take from the time during the pandemic when you have been doing a lot of work, for the government and for more national initiatives. What will you bring from that to the classroom when you return?
I'd just come up with an answer to the first question, Mark.
You can answer the first question if you like.
The first answer is easy. I think what we all learned during the pandemic was the value of schools and the value of teachers, and I hope that isn't forgotten as quickly as these things sometimes can be. In terms of what will I take back to school, as I said, I can't wait to get back into school. The highlights of the last couple of weeks in terms of my work calendar has been being out working with 5 of our schools in Glasgow with 250 young people, which has been fantastic. I think the biggest thing is, so what I've learned is that at a time when people were most isolated and felt maybe that kind of remoteness, I don't think I've ever seen as much collaboration and connectedness in the education system in Scotland as I've seen over the past 12 months. I think West OS has been a really powerful example of teacher collaboration. It has, as I said, brought people from every region of the country together. And I think the reason for that is because it directly benefits the learning and teaching of young people. And I think at times we need to remember our core business. Our core business is looking after the futures of young people, both in terms of learning and teaching, and also in providing a safe environment. And that's why having our young people back in school buildings, as much as I've been involved in the online and the digital side of it, which primarily existed certainly initially to support people out of the school building. I think that it still comes back to the value of being in school and the time that we have in school as teachers and as young people, and making the most of that. So I think those are the kind of big lessons: the need for further collaboration, the need to work together as teachers and as schools across communities. I hope that our politicians and our education leaders have also learned that lesson. I think we've seen a lot of collaboration, and I hope that continues as well. And I think, I think that's it. I think I will end on the story that one young person in Springburn Academy explained during the week, and the young person basically exasperatedly said, "Do you know, it's no fair. It's not fair. We've had it really tough. It's never been as hard. It wasn't as hard for you or anyone else. You know, when we leave school, it's the hardest it's ever been." And I said, "Do you know, I think you're right." And I do. I think he was right. But I also explained to him that I don't think there's ever been a cohort of young people that have had as much support and the opportunity to access support as our young people do now. So there's also a responsibility on us as teachers to ensure that our young people know where that support is and how to access it. And then, of course, there's always the responsibility of our young people to use it as well. But it's primarily, as teachers, it's our responsibility to signpost that, to encourage them, to inspire them, just as my teachers did when on my route. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think that answered the question, but
it doesn't matter. Maybe I think what's really interesting from all 3 of you is the interface between your role as a teacher and your role as biologists and biology teachers. And what the pandemic, I think, has brought out is a lot of those really key aspects of the role of a teacher, which is about care, nurture, and providing safety and security to young people, as well as providing with opportunity, to flourish through biology. So, and that's no surprise really in this evening's event, taking place when it does with two of you we judged during the pandemic, and Gemma from before. And Gemma's changed school and gone through a pandemic. She's a completely different person by now, as we come to this point. The final thing that I'd like to say is just what a privilege it is to be chair of the judging panel on this competition, because it's a privilege to go into anyone's classroom, frankly, and to watch them teach and to watch children learn. But what we see, me and my fellow judges, is some of the best biology teaching in the country, and it's an absolute joy. And there's not a year when I don't learn something from the people who I'm watching, and my colleagues would say exactly the same thing. If you're watching this and you're a child, or you're a teacher, or you're a parent, and you're thinking, well, I'm quite good, or my teacher's quite good, or my child's teacher's quite good, then please do nominate yourself or them, or get someone to nominate you, because we are running the competition this year. The information will be on Royal Society of Biology's web pages, and please jump in. You don't need to write very much. It's a very short initial nomination form, just to register, and then we'll get back to you and tell you what else needs to be done, or we'll get back to the teacher and tell the teacher what else they need to do. But it's a fantastic opportunity, and it's not, if you're feeling a bit like, oh, well, I'm not the best teacher in the country, that doesn't matter. We're interested in biology teaching, and we're interested in highlighting the most fantastic biology teaching that we can find. And if you're doing some fantastic biology teaching, or if you're a student and you're experiencing fantastic biology teaching, please do nominate and join in with this award, because it's been a joy being involved in it, and I think it's a really valuable thing for really furthering and championing the best biology teaching that we've got here. So thank you very much to Matthew, thank you to Gemma, thank you to Paul, thank you to Karen and to Raghav, who are sitting in the background and nobody can see, but they're really the people who put this together, and we're merely the performers. They're like the directors, and we're on the stage. And thank you for coming, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And like I say, do nominate, because we want some competitors for this year's competition. And thanks very much again. Thank you all.